Okay. Y'all got y'all scriptures ready because we're going to go into a pretty good lesson. Yeah, let's do it like this. There, I can hear it's clear. All right. This particular lesson we're going into is we're going to go into some of Paul's writings. All right. Out there, like I said, there's a ball of confusion concerning the understanding of Paul's writings. All right. Now, Paul is in line with Christ. All right. Paul was never in variance with Christ's writings. So, when people read Paul's writings without the full knowledge of what he was actually speaking about, if you're unlearned, which means not, and that's not condescending, that means if you have not gone to the level to know what was being spoken about at the time that it was written, or you haven't been exposed to it, Paul's writings can trip you up. Okay, so we was going to make this a regular doctrinal lesson, like I mentioned before. We was going to make it a doctrinal lesson for the Advanced Academy, but since we didn't have that last night, hopefully those that was in the Advanced Academy will be following us now and get this, and others can have it also. All right. And of course, we will be doing the advanced lesson next Friday. Okay. And that particular lesson, we're going to be going into the fruits of the Spirit and faith. That's going to be the lesson next Friday for those that was in the advanced lessons. We try to keep those lessons for people who are within the church. And the stuff you're used to seeing on YouTube is what we do out on the street, and those are the things that bring the knowledge of what's going on in the earth the last days. We put those things out there. And of course, the Sabbath, we try to deal with things according to the Sabbath, and we try to give lessons according to prophecy so that you'll know what to look for. On Sundays, we deal with the Academy for those that are part of that. There we deal with the Hebrew. You get the audio files, you get the PDFs, you get all that information. After that, Brother Mark from the United Kingdom and myself deal with the news segment, which is usually pretty interesting. After that, and then right after that, we give the lesson that you can follow us with your PDF and with the information that was compiled for you. And that's usually how it goes. And then we have a little question and answer after it's done. Usually on Wednesday, Elder Gabbard of his own time, he goes straight from work. Isn't that what he do? He goes straight from work after working 8 in the morning to home, and he's actually the guy that's over the quiz update, which means everyone in the academy on Wednesday, if they would like, they can come in live through Ustream, and he'll go over the answers based on the lesson you've learned Sunday. See, in that way, not only are you getting it taught to you, you have tests so you can retain the information to be able to recall and teach it on your own when the Most High catapult you all as teachers. This guy, he comes straight from work 8 in the morning, get home, probably have a little dinner, does the quiz. As soon as the quiz is done, he got about 30 minutes to set up the guest for the radio show that he's going to do from 8 to 11, from 9 to like 11, 12 midnight. That means this brother's going from 8 a.m. in the morning all the way to 12 midnight every Wednesday, and no one see it, but the Most High see it. And so, let me tell you, a lot of people are growing, and let me tell you, I can't even read the number of letters that brothers have brought to my attention off of how the academy have affected them when it comes to being able to teach it and know it for themselves, and have the confidence to know that when they bring this information forth, it cannot be gainsaid. Very, very important. Very important. Now, so going back to Paul's writings, it tells you in the Bible that if you are a new convert or a new beginning learner, you must know Christ and teach and learn in that first before you can even learn the epistles. Now, the Catholic Church understood this. Why? Because Paul's letters were not addressed to the congregation. Paul's letters were actually letters to the elders and deacons of the church who already knew the law. Like, for instance, if I'm writing a letter to an executive or someone of my peer, I can leave out all the middle jargon because we are already on certain levels together already. I don't have to just say everything meticulously because we both understand the same thing. So when Paul was writing letters to the elders, this was high-level information on how to run a congregation or run a church. And these people already had the knowledge of Christ. They already knew the law. Now, Paul would write letters based on disputes. Like, for instance, you have to understand that if Christ is bringing the gospel, which is brand new during this time, there was nothing like what Christ brought forth before Christ brought it forth. So Christ shook up the normal way of things. So then, when the churches were established, listen to me clearly, when the churches were established, you had people who were still from the old school, bringing their old school teachings into the church. So Paul had to constantly correct them and have them know that they have to now curtail the old way of doing things and apply mercy and grace instead of judgment. The example I can give you is usually in the event that someone did something that was unto death. If you did it before Christ's time, they would put you to death. The woman that was caught in the act of adultery, it was the act of adultery, right? Mm-hmm. The act of adultery that would drag before Christ, and they all had stones, wanted to stone this woman. Now, according to the law, she was supposed to die that day. And Yeshua looked at them and he wrote it in the sand. Ye without sin, cast the first stone. And they all dropped their rocks. Why? Because who knows, maybe one of them could have dealt with her before. But yet they're going to try to kill this woman? They all dropped the rocks. Right? Now, that mercy and grace was actually materialized into the church that Peter would establish. That instead of judgment, there's grace. Not a doing away of the law, but a reforming of the law that allow us opportunity to see our error and come to the knowledge of the truth. When you didn't have that opportunity in the Old Testament, you did something wrong, you were dead. So Paul was explaining to the Nicolaitans, the Pharisees, the different people who was actually being baptized in the church, listen, y'all got some habits according to the law that's against Christ's law. You're not going to come in our church killing people. You're not going to come in here judging the Greeks and the people who are just coming out of Gentile ways. You're going to give them an opportunity to progress, to learn Christ. And therefore, they'll pick up the law through conscience and through spirit and not through force. Now they're dealing with the spirit of the law and not because someone is going to kill them. So that was the big argument in the law. Paul never done away with the law. But in order for you to understand that, And then I'm going to say this. You must know. In order for you to understand this, you must know Paul's purpose of writings. Listen to this clearly. Let's go to 1 Peter's. Let's get it. 2 Peter's 3:14, right? 3 and 15.
2 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. And account that the long suffering of our Lord is salvation, even as our beloved brother Paul, also according to the wisdom given unto him hath written unto you, as also in all his epistles, speaking in them of these things, in which are some things hard to be understood.
So it says Paul, in his epistles, which is his writings, his letters, was speaking things which are hard to be understood. Read.
Which they that are unlearned.
They who are unlearned. So if you are just a new person learning the truth, you shouldn't be listening to nothing concerning or going against Paul. You don't even know why Paul was writing letters. They which are what?
Unlearned.
Unlearned.
And unstable rest.
And unstable, that means you're not stable. They do what?
As they do also the other scriptures, unto their own destruction.
So they'll wrestle with Paul's writings. And because they don't understand what Paul's writings was about, they butcher other scriptures to their own destruction. See, the Catholic Church knew this. So instead of making Christ's writings the pinnacle of what should be taught of the gospel first, you notice that the Catholic Church surrounded all their teachings around Paul. Not that Paul's writings were wrong, but that they could deceive the people knowing that his words are hard to be understood. They could take those gray areas and actually inject their Gentile doctrine through what you would call philosophy. This is how they did it. I'm going to give you an example of what I'm saying. We know that Paul was raised a Pharisee, right? He was raised under the Pharisaical law. So Paul knew the law. He taught the law. As a matter of fact, he went against Christ's church until Christ knocked him back on the road of Damascus. So Paul knew the law. All right? So Paul wasn't going against the law. So why did Christ choose Paul? He chose Paul because Paul did know the law. And that Paul was afflicting the children of Israel, thinking that this new gospel would do away with Moses' law. So if anyone can show that there's mercy in the law, Christ could use a Pharisee to bring it forth. Who else would be better? Someone who was executing judgment against God's people. Who else would be in a better position to bring forth the grace of Christ? The same grace Christ showed when he spared that woman's life. So he used someone that was an expert in the law so that other Pharisees couldn't come up to try to contend with him in the law because no one knew it better. But Christians will use that and say, well, Paul was saying, do away with the law, and he wasn't. So when you are learned, you understand that, and you realize how much a level Paul was on. You get people who are unlearned because they don't understand Paul's writings, but they want to be recognized as teachers, but they don't understand Paul's writings. So what they do? Because they don't understand it, and they're wrestling with it, they'll be like, well, you must have been a false prophet because I don't understand it. No, you're unlearned. Or sometimes you have to realize if you don't have it yet, you don't have to throw it out because you don't understand it yet. You got to pray. You have to read on. You got to read some history. You got to read what was going on during those times. So that now you can be well informed to know why Paul was writing these epistles. Epistles means letters. Like an example, if I'm writing a letter to your house, I'm addressing it to the parents or the people who running the house. I'm not addressing it to everyone in the house or the children in the house. I'm sending a letter to the head of the house. So Paul wasn't sending his letters to everybody in Rome. He was sending his letters or epistles to the elders in Rome, to the elders in Ephesus, to the elders in Colossia, to the elders in Galatia. These all knew the law. Think Peter didn't know the law? Peter knew the law. So understand that these letters were elders' conversation on how to deal with matters with congregation and those who might come in, bringing what you would call the force or the penalty of death within the church. So Paul would write letters like, how can you now come into the church and try to put people back under the bonds in which Christ made us free? That means you're not going. If someone is caught up in adultery or something in this church, you're not killing nobody in here. They're going to have an opportunity to get things together. Christ's blood paid for that opportunity. You're not going to sit here and start killing people. That's why Paul was telling them about the law. That's what he was saying about the law. Not that the law was done away with. I'm going to give you an example how the Christians use these gray areas with Paul. Let's go to Timothy 4. And they'll use this to say that you can eat pork, shrimp, crab, lobster, mouse, any other unclean food that's out there. And I've dealt with a pastor on this before, and I'm like, come on, brother, you can't afford this scripture for that. I'm like, so, you know, what y'all want to eat, rats up in here? He said, well, rats are not food. I'm like, in China it's food. And believe it or not, in your neighborhood it's foods too, because the majority of these Chinese stores around here are selling rat. They selling rat up in here and cat up in here. So you can't tell me that the Most High wants you eating cats, rats, and dogs. But I'm going to give you an example. Here's an example of how the Christians will use this scripture to trip up and unlearn. Read.
1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1.
Read.
Now the Spirit speaketh expressly that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith.
Some shall depart from the faith.
Giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils.
Giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils. Which means if someone teach what Paul is about to break down, they've been seduced by a spirit and a devil. Now, mind you, he's talking about people who are baptized in the church, departing from the faith that Christ delivered the disciples, departing from what they learned. So when you depart from the faith in which you learn, that's showing you that you're seduced. You're seduced by a doctrine of devils. Read.
Verse 2. Speaking lies and hypocrisy.
Speaking lies and hypocrisy.
Having their conscience seared with a hot iron.
Go ahead.
Verse 3. Forbidding to marry.
Now, if someone teach anyone that they cannot marry like they do in the Catholic Church, that's seducing spirits and doctrines of devils. Then the Bible tells you, so how did the Catholic Church teach this verse? I have no idea. You can't forbid a man and woman to marry and say if you are a priest, then you can't have a wife. If you're a man, you can't have a husband. That's against the law. Don't you know Peter had a wife? And he was in charge of the church. So that's a lie. That's a seducing spirit when they teach that now in the Babylonian temples for child sacrifice, the priests and the nuns couldn't deal with laymen because they had to deal with each other to bear children for Moloch. Yeah, that's why a lot of the babies, when you tear down some of these Catholic churches, they're dead babies buried under the church. So it's not like they're not marrying, but they're marrying ritualistically for child sacrifice. But let's not go there. Let's stay in the parameters of Paul's writings. Read that again.
Forbidding to marry,
Forbidding to marry, which is actually a doctrine of devils,
and commanding to abstain from meats.
and commanding to abstain from meats. So they'll say, well, listen, you're telling us to abstain from pork. That's a doctrine of devil. That's a seducing of spirits. But no, because it clears it up as Paul is saying this in Timothy. Read.
Which the Most High,
Which the Most High, if I told you to abstain from meats that the Most High, read.
have created to be received with thanksgiving.
So if I told you to abstain from meats that the Most High created to be received with thanksgiving, then that would be a seducing spirit and doctrine of devils. But we never tell you to do that. We never tell you to abstain from meats that the Most High made to be received with thanksgiving. Because those are the clean meats in Leviticus, the 11th chapter. The Most High never gave you a pig to be received with thanksgiving. He never told you can pray over a pig in the Old Testament. Right? But because Christians don't know and they are unlearned, they'll read that and they'll do the reverse of that and eat pork and use this scripture to do it. That's an example how the Christians use Paul's writings to deceive the unlearned. Why? Because Paul was writing this to leaders of the church who knew not to eat pork. Now, on the other hand, if I was to tell you that to be a vegetarian and that you cannot eat lamb, deer, ox, and all the animals the Most High said is clean, then you can look at me and say that, listen, you're dealing with a seducing spirit and doctrine of devils. How can you force me to be a vegan and say that it's wrong to eat meat when the Most High gave it to us to be received with thanksgiving in Leviticus, the 11th chapter? So Paul's argument was not against pork and clean meat. His arguments, he was selling arguments between vegans, people who were vegetarians, and those who ate physical meat. Those were the disputes Paul was settling. It had nothing to do with eating pork. Also, people don't do the research and look up the word shambles in the scriptures. And let's go there too, about the shambles. Shambles were the markets in which the Gentiles bought their food. Shambles were the place where Gentiles purchased their food. Like, for instance, if you went into what you would call, at our time, a righteous kosher market, there would be no unclean meat in it at all. Those are the only places we could get our food from. We cannot go into the Gentiles market for food because next to the pork, you'll have beef. Next to the beef, you have poultry. It wasn't like that, okay, in our markets. So that means anytime they seen a Jew walking into a Gentile market, they considered that blasphemy. Why? Because there was pork in there. Now, Paul was going against our brothers that was trying to stop the Gentiles and Israelites who were coming into the church from continuing to shop in the markets they were used to. Because as long as they go into the shambles to get clean meat, as long as they're not buying pork, it's okay. But at one time, even if Israelites went into the shambles and bought cow and bought ox or whatever the case is, it was still considered unclean because it was a shambles of the Gentiles. A lot of us don't know that. A lot of us don't have that history. And you know what? The Christians know we don't have that history. The theologians who set up Christian theology knew we didn't have that history. So they made it seem like there was an argument between eating pork and clean meat, and it wasn't at all. All the foods in the shambles were considered unclean because it was the temple's meat. Even if it was cow, even if it was deer, venison, Even if it was lawful, it was still unlawful for the Jews. But they don't teach that. Read it.
1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 19.
Read.
What say I then?
What say I then?
That the idol is anything, or that which is offered in sacrifice to idols is anything. But I say that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils.
But the things that the Gentiles sacrifice, they're buying their meat to pray over it to demons. Read.
And not to the Most High.
And not to the Most High. Read.
And I would not that you should have fellowship with devils.
And it says, I should not that you should have fellowship with devils. Go ahead.
Verse 21. Ye cannot drink the cup of the Most High and the cup of devils.
You cannot drink the cup of the Most High and the cup of devils. You can't say that you're down with the Most High, but yet you're setting up feasts for Satan. Like Christmas, like Thanksgiving. These are all festivities for a sacrifice to demons. Read.
You cannot be partakers of the Lord's table and of the table of devils.
You can't say you're down with the Most High, but yet you're dealing with demon sacrifice. And some people don't even look at the pagan ritualistic feasts that go on in this earth. Give me that paper. Go ahead.
Verse 21. Ye cannot drink of the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils.
Go ahead.
Ye cannot be partakers of the Lord's table and of the table of devils.
You cannot partake of the Most High's table and be down with the devils. So here it is, Paul is giving an understanding of, listen, if you're going to have these things, if you're going to go shopping or whatever else, you can't be doing it and sitting down in Gentile and pagan celebration. And he was telling the people that were converting into the church, because Paul was converting a lot of Gentiles. They were used to doing ritualistic pagan tradition. He was telling them, listen, you can't do that under your gods anymore. That's the context of this. Don't forget, this church is fairly new. Christ's word is fairly new. People are used to their tradition. Not only Gentiles, Jews too. So Paul was not only correcting Gentiles, he was correcting our people who was coming in with the astringent law in the hammer. He was also correcting the Gentiles who were coming in and still practicing their pagan rituals. So the letters was to the heads of the churches, knowing that these new converts were coming in with all these different spiritual issues. Right? Read.
Verse 22. Do we provoke the Lord to jealousy?
Do we provoke the Most High to jealousy?
Are we stronger than he?
Are we stronger than him?
Verse 23. All things are lawful for me.
Why did Paul say all things is lawful for him? Because he was at the point to understand both good and evil. He knew what to do in every instance. Read.
All things are lawful for me, but not all things are expedient.
But not all things are expedient. That means you have to know when to do certain things. Just because it's lawful for me, I'm going to be careful. And Paul gave the example of, even though I'm going into the temple or to the shambles to get me some ox, which is lawful, if a young man see me going into a Gentile market, that can be a stumbling block to him. So even though I know it's lawful for me to go in there and get some lawful meat, it's not expedient. Because it's not right if someone may think I'm going in there to actually get food that could be sacrificed to other gods. So if someone around, even though I'm going to get what's lawful, if someone around that may stumble from what I'm about to do, I won't go in there. All right? So these was the examples, not eating pork. The churches will never tell you that. But you have to be learned to know this. These letters were not to the everyday person in a church. These letters were specifically elder and deacon readings. Period. Telling them how to deal with the conduct of the converts, Jews and Gentiles alike. Read.
All things are lawful for me,
All things are lawful for me.
but all things are not expedient.
All things are not expedient.
All things are lawful for me, but all things edify not.
But all things edify not. Because why? I may do something that may trip another person. And if it don't edify the person, why do it? And that was the point. And he was using food as an example. Like, for instance, and here's our example today. Here it is, we out there telling people you can't eat shrimp, crab, and lobster. You can't go you can't be celebrating these pagan holidays. And one of the persons who was out there looking at us speak, 3 days later, after Christmas, see me with eggnog at a Christmas party. Right? Now, listen, I may be there because it's some people there that I want to convert into the truth. Now, I know it's lawful if that's my purpose to pull them out. But if I see that it's going to be, that this person is not going to deal now because they seen this, I got to just say, listen, I'm not going to do it all together. I'm not even going to go to the party because somebody might be there and see me there and get the wrong idea from it. These were the examples Paul was giving. And so because a lot of brothers look at Paul's writings and don't understand that and don't go into the history of how the church progressed and how it started, they look at these things and say, well, these things are deep. Paul is confusing me. He must be a false prophet. No. You just have to continue to learn. Let me tell you, Paul was just as great as any of the disciples. Just as great. Okay? Finish reading.
Verse 24. Let no man seek his own, but every man another's wealth. Whatsoever is...
Read that again.
Let no man seek his own.
Let no man seek his own.
But every man another's wealth.
But every man's another's wealth. That's looking out for others. Read.
Verse 25. Whatsoever is sold in the shambles.
Whatsoever is sold in the shambles.
That eat.
That eat.
Asking no question for conscience sake.
Asking no questions for conscience sake. Why did it say that? Because the shambles is where the Gentiles shop for their food. Jews were not allowed to go there. But now Paul is saying, listen, if you do go into the shambles, listen, as long as you're not eating things that is unclean, as long as you're not eating pork and all that, go grab your meat over there. As long as you're not doing the same sacrificial rituals to those gods like Diana and Jupiter and what have you, just get the meat. Don't worry about that. Read.
Verse 26. For the earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof.
See, but the Christians will use this same scripture to say that you can eat anything you want without researching what was the shambles. You see that? So it's these gray areas that Christians use, and they see the gray areas in Paul's writings. Now, these gray areas were not gray at all to the elders and deacons because they knew what foods to eat. They knew what was unclean, they knew what was clean, and they knew what was unclean. So this, he didn't have to go into minute detail with learned men. Hope you all understand what I'm trying to show you here. People are straight lying and going against Paul, and now you're going to understand that you don't understand Christ if you don't understand Paul, because Paul was on a level. Paul executed Christ's will in this earth. Christ was able to, Paul was able to show the truth to not only to our people, to the world. Paul was a man of the Most High. But he's misunderstood based on Christian theology and how they're looking to get away from Christ's writings altogether. Now, the reason they don't want to deal with Christ's writings is because Christ is direct. I came not to do away with the law, Matthew 5:17, or the prophets. I come not to destroy, but to fulfill. So you can't use Christ and say the law is done away with. Well, let's look at these epistles over here. Well, because Paul was writing to people who knew the law already, he didn't have to go into every minute detail. So let's just use that because it's not really clear and we can inject our philosophy with it. So Paul's teachings are correct. Christians' philosophy and theology have tainted Paul's purpose and what he was really writing these epistles for. Read.
Verse 27.
Chapter and verse.
1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 27.
Go ahead.
If any of them that believe if any of them that believe not bid you to a feast.
If anyone that believe not bid you to a feast.
And ye be disposed to go.
Read that.
Whatsoever.
Hold on, read it again.
If any of them that believe not bid you to a feast, and ye be disposed to go, whatsoever is set before you eat, asking no question for conscience sake.
Read it again.
If any of them that believe not bid you to a feast.
So if someone bid you to a feast, they invite you to come. Read.
And ye be disposed to go.
And you be disposed to go.
Whatsoever is set before you, eat.
Whatever is set before you, eat.
Asking no question for conscience sake.
Asking no questions for conscience sake. Now still, you have to understand in the same vein of when we read Timothy's, Paul already knows what clean and unclean food is. So he's not telling people to eat unclean food. He's saying that, listen, if they invite you to a party or invite you to a position where you can actually show something, don't offend these people. I don't know how many times I went to a place and they would have certain things and I would just straight off, I would be there. I wouldn't refuse their food because it would be offensive. But if I seen something unclean up in that kitchen, I would say, listen, I'll let them know, I'll take some of that rice and I'll ask them what they got in those greens. What, you got some turkey neck? Okay, let me get some of those greens. All right? And, and then I wouldn't offend them. But if they put a plate before you and they have actually slaved over the food as a form of love and respect to you, you're not supposed to be ignorant and say, man, I don't want that. Even, let me tell you, even if it's unclean food, even if it's pork on the plate, you still don't got to look down on the plate. You can be like, well, excuse me, I don't, and don't do it in front of people. Take the plate to the side and say, listen, if you can, I would like you to get this plate to someone else. I don't eat pork or whatever. And then they'll respect that, they'll honor that and give you what's correct. Right? But again, like I was mentioning, brother, like I was mentioning here, the Christians would make it seem as if there's pork on the plate. So when they go to the scripture, I'm asking, well, where's the pork at? There's no pork there. It didn't say pork on the plate. But it says whatever put before them. But suppose what's put before them is clean meat. Why haven't you exhausted that option? Why? Because you want to eat the pork. You need an excuse for eating pork. And no disciples ever gave you the rein to do so. Not Christ or the disciples. Now let's look at this on the other side, outside of Christians. You have Jews who don't believe in Paul's writings. Because they're deceived from what the Christians are teaching, they believe that's talking about pork too. So now the deception is on both sides, with Hebrews and with Gentiles. Y'all follow me here? With me? Okay. Go ahead.
Verse 28. But if any man say unto you, this is offered and sacrificed unto idols.
But if they tell you that they're about to go sacrifice this food to Satan, and under Beelzebub, this food was prayed to. Read.
Eat not for his sake that showed it.
Do not eat the food. Like for instance, if I was ever invited into a Christmas thing or whatever, and I was there to actually bring forth some truth, it was very rare that it ever happened, but if it ever happened, when they go to pray and all that, I'm out of the room. I'm waiting until they get rid of all that. And I'm coming back, I'm like, okay, I'll take some of those greens, if there's some turkey in there, I'll take some of that rice, but I'm not dealing with the ritual. Right? I'm not being a part of that because I know what God they're praying to. Right? Read.
But if any man say unto you, this is offered in sacrifice unto idols,
Go ahead.
eat not for his sake that showed it.
Eat not for his sake that showed it. If someone say, well, that Chinese food, that they put that food on altars to dragons this morning. But like, for real? Well, yeah, look in the Chinese store. At the very bottom, you can see the things hanging off that. That's an altar. Now, for that brother that told me sake, I'm going to be like, well, listen, I'm good. I'm not going to eat it, huh? You can take this. That's the example. Why? Because it tells you at the very end that we're going to be idle, eating things sacrificed to idols. This is how Gentiles pray demons into our people. They pray it into the food and we consume it. And it brings forth sickness. They've been doing this for years, for ages. It's in their documents. This is how they control people. So now you're getting a demon inadvertently. That's why I tell you in 2nd Esdras, it tell you about while you're idle, that means while you're not doing anything, you start eating foods that were sacrificed to idols. You got to be careful with that. And when you eat out and go through all these chains, a lot of this food is sacrificed to idols, brothers and sisters. Got people in the food and all that. Learn to start preparing your own food and praying your food to your God. It's very important. But finish reading.
And for conscience sake, for the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof.
Go ahead.
Verse 29. Conscience, I say, not thine own, but of the other. For why my liberty is judged of another man's conscience. For if by grace be a partaker, why am I evil spoken of for that which I give thanks?
So, if grace is a part of what Christ brought, why is he even evil spoken of? It seemed like Paul couldn't do anything right. Here it is, he's bringing Gentiles to the truth of Christ. But yet, you understand, his own brothers is looking at him like something is up with this guy. Why are you around Gentiles? Why are you going around near where they worship and all that? But yet, he was actually bringing the Gentiles to the Israelites' God. He was bringing the Gentiles to a higher, being a light to the Gentiles. On the other hand, you had our people looking at him and say, listen, he's scorning the law. He wasn't scorning the law. He understood the law. He was a Pharisee himself. But he was executing the grace of the law. And usually you have these Old Testament bangers out there who are Israelites who would reject Paul. And the same people, believe it or not, they would probably reject Christ too. All right? Now, one of the greatest deceptions, and I'm going to go there real quick, is their misunderstanding of what Paul was speaking of when he was talking about the law. They claimed that Paul's works was undoing what Christ created and what Moses began. They were claiming that Paul was tearing down Christ's stance on the law and Moses' stance on the law, and that's a bold-faced lie. Believe it or not, a lot of our Israelite brothers are doing to Paul what Israelite and Pharisee brothers did to Christ. They were trying to claim Christ wasn't following the law of Moses and wanted him dead. Now, we're looking at Paul and saying he's not following the law of Moses, when he was. Let's go to Romans, the 7th chapter, so we'll give you the understanding of the word law, L-A-W. I'm saying this. When you see the word law in the scriptures, it's not all the time. It's not talking about Moses' law all the time. It's not. So you have to use the precepts and have understanding here to know what law he's talking about. Okay? Now, let's go to Romans 7 as an example of a chapter in which you can read the word law many times, but yet it's not talking about the same situation. Multiple times. And I use Romans 7 is because It speaks of the law, and if you're confused of this and you're unlearned, you'll just relate everything to the law of Moses, like the Christians do. Well, it say law there, so the law must be done away with. Well, my question to Christians is, what law is Paul speaking of here? What law is he speaking of when he wrote this to the elders of Rome? Because we know Paul followed the law. He was a Pharisee. So let's see if we can get some further understanding. Let's go to Romans 7:1.
Romans chapter 7, verse 1. Know ye not, brethren, for I speak to them that know the law.
So now, Paul is speaking to them who know the law of Moses. Who are they? The Jews. That's crystal clear. Now, it's clear he's talking about the law of Moses. Here. Read.
That the law hath dominion over a man as long as he liveth.
The law hath dominion over a man as long as he lived. And even physical law says the same. What goes up must come down. We're under that law as long as we're living, just on the physical sense. The same way when it comes to Christ's work, and when it comes to us being Hebrews. So if Paul said that we're under the law as long as we live it, how can you now come around, Christians, and say that the law that Paul is trying to attack and destroy the law of Moses? You just don't understand. And that's okay too. Let's get some understanding. Read.
Verse 2. For the woman which hath an husband is bound by the law to her husband, so long as he liveth.
So what law is he specifically talking about in the second verse? The law of marriage. The second verse is talking about the law of marriage. Right? But he's going to relate this to a common law that you cannot escape as long as you're living it. And I'm going to show you. And he's using this as an example. The same way a woman is bound to a man as long as that husband liveth. She's under that law. Read.
But if the husband be dead, she is loosed from the law of her husband.
But if he die, she's loose from that law. If he's dead. Read.
Verse 3. So then if, while her husband liveth, she be married to another man, she shall be called an adulteress. But if her husband be dead, she is free from that law.
That's crystal clear. So we know what law Paul is speaking of here. Go ahead.
So that she is no adulteress, though she be married to another man.
Go ahead.
Verse 4. Wherefore, my brethren, ye also are become dead to the law by the body of Christ.
Now he's giving an example of how, in order for you to marry another, that the husband must be dead, or there must be a death to take place. Now, Paul is paralleling a new law. How in order for us to marry Christ, which is the bridegroom, there must have been a death. Someone must have died. Israel fell. Israel was totally dejected. Therefore, they was not connected to the Most High no more. Therefore, under that law, they could marry another, the same as a wife and a husband. Now he's giving that example now. But an entirely different law. But it's still the same in understanding on a spiritual level. Read.
Verse 4. Wherefore, my brethren, ye also are become dead to the law by the body of Christ.
By the body of Christ.
That ye should be married to another.
That we should be married to another.
Even to him who was raised from the dead.
Even to Christ. So now there was a death. Now we can marry the bridegroom. You see that? Read.
That we should bring forth fruit unto the Most High.
And therefore we should bring forth fruit the same way when a husband and wife marry comes fruit, children. Now when you come to the knowledge and you're married to Christ, you bring forth fruit. More children come to the Most High. Fruit comes from that. That's what Paul is paralleling here. But now he's going to bring forth another law. Now, if you don't know the precepts, you would think that he's talking about marriage or the church. But in the 5th verse, he go into an entirely different law altogether. Read the 5th verse.
Verse 5. For when we were in the flesh, the motions of sin, which were by the law, did work in our members to bring forth fruit unto death.
Now what sin? It says, for when we were in the flesh, the motions of sins which were by the law did work in our members to bring forth fruit unto death. Now, we know the law of Moses, or the law that was given to us, do not work death in our members. The law was given because of life. But the key point in this is when it says, and did work in our members and bring forth fruits unto death. This happened once before in the beginning. There was a choice with Adam. He had a choice of life or the choice of the tree of good and evil. And when he ate the wrong tree, it brought forth death. It brought forth a law in the earth in which his children would need to struggle with those same choices. Let's give the proof on that. Now let's talking about the law that we actually received through Adam's sin. Now, if you don't know these precepts, this will totally throw you off because this was not written to the unlearned. It wasn't written to the common members of the church. This was actually written to leaders of the church who understood what Paul was speaking. Let's go to 2 Epistles 3:17.
2 Epistles chapter 3, verse 17. And it came to pass that when thou leddest his seed out of Egypt, thou broughtest them up to the Mount Sinai, and bowing the heavens, thou didst set fast the earth, movest the whole world, and madest the depths to tremble, and troublest the men of that age. And the glory that went forth.
Let's go straight to Adam.
Verse 20.
We're at 2 Epistles 3:20. Read.
Verse 20. And yet tookest thou not away from them a wicked heart, that thy law may bring forth fruit in them. For the first Adam bearing a wicked heart transgressed.
Read it again.
For the first Adam bearing a wicked heart transgressed
and
was overcome. And so be all they that are born of him.
And so be all that are born from him. So a law was instituted within our flesh when Adam sinned. That would be a curse to his children. This is what Paul is writing about in Romans 7:5. For we were in the flesh, the motions of sin which were by the law. What law? The law that was in our father Adam after the sin. Whereby the law did work in our members to bring forth fruit unto death. He said, if you eat that tree, you shall surely die. Let me tell you, brothers and sisters, that's high-level stuff that Paul is writing to the churches. That's why when Christians read these things, they're totally confused. Because Paul is jumping from one topic to the next. But he can do that in conversation with those of his peers who understands already. I hope this is clear to you all. So every time it speaks about law, it's not talking about the law of Moses. Crystal clear. Through the precepts that I can understand, and therefore I hate every false way. You must use the precepts to get the understanding of Paul, or you'll be unlearned and you'll wrestle with Paul's writings. And also through that, you will butcher other scriptures to your own destruction. I hear people saying, well, I'm still looking into Paul. Listen, if you're still looking into Paul, listen, just stick with the epistles. I mean, just stick with the Gospels. Because if you look into Paul with what's out there without the Most High inspiring you to understand and do the research on the history of this, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be deceived on the Jew side and the Christian side. Because they both use those gray areas to deceive people in their philosophy. I need you to go to Romans 7:6. Read. 7 and 5. Yeah, more in Esdras. Excuse me, read.
Second Ezra chapter 2, chapter 3, verse 22.
Go ahead.
Thus infirmity was made permanent,
Though that infirmity was made permanent, that's that law.
and the law also in the heart of the people with the malignity of the root.
Read that again.
And the law also in the heart of the people
And the law also in the heart of the people,
with the malignity of the root.
with the malignity of the root, having the root that came from their father Adam. See, and that's the reason the Most High had to give us the law in stone again, so that we can now have a choice between what was written and the law of sin that was in us through our father's Adam's fall. Hope you all can see that. Right? Now, I only read 5 verses here, brothers and sisters, and already Paul covered 3 separate laws. And the whole time Christians will read this and see the word law, they'll believe it's just talking about the law of Moses. Now, if the Bible tells you through Christ's blood, the law of sin that was given, that was put in our members through Adam can be done away with, and it's talking about that law in specific. Suppose it's talking about that, but yet the Christians have been programmed to believe every time they see law, it's talking about the law of Moses. You getting it now? I think a light is coming on now. Yeah. So yes, there was a law done away with. We're reading it. Through Christ's blood, we can now be saved from that law that was instituted in Adam. Also the law of death that came, because don't forget, let's go back in Genesis and let's go to that, let's go to what the Most High told Adam, that if he eat of that tree, what would happen? Read it.
Genesis chapter 2, verse 15.
Go ahead.
And the Most High power took the man and put him into the garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. And the Most High commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat.
You can eat anything you want, Adam.
But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it. For in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die.
Thou shalt surely what?
Thou shalt surely die.
There was no such thing as death. Adam brought forth a law of death in the earth. Therefore, when Moses received the law, which would actually fight against that, in that law was also a penalty of what? If you didn't do it? Death. But that thing in itself, the death part, is the curse. Something have to die so that we could live. That's the curse. That's a law, brothers and sisters. But the Christians don't know that. So when they see that law in the New Testament, they believe that's talking about the law of Moses, when it was the law of death, the law of sacrifice, the sin that came with the law instituted with Adam's sin in the beginning. Right? That's crystal clear. Some people, some Jews, some Israelites look at this and like, that's just too much. You know, I just rather believe that he was a false prophet. No. You just don't want to understand. You think everything is just so cut and dry and written on paper without dealing with the spirit of the law. And that's what Paul was dealing with. That's what Yeshua was dealing with. Let's go to Romans 7 and 6.
Romans chapter 7, verse 6. But now we are delivered from the law.
Now, hold up. Now we delivered from the what?
But now we are delivered from the law.
We are delivered from the law. Now, it just explained what law he was talking about. The law of sin and death that came through Adam. Animals had to die through a sacrifice because of Adam. How did you think Adam got clothed and Eve got clothed before they were put out of the garden? An animal had to die. That's when the law of sacrifice was instituted. That's how Abel knew what sacrifice to bring before the Most High. In Genesis, the 4th chapter. The Most High showed them back then what animals to sacrifice. So animals was dying because of Adam's sin. He brought forth death throughout all creation. That's a law. So in Romans 7 and 6 it reads, but now we are delivered from the law because Christ is delivering us from that death. Read.
That being dead wherein we were held.
It says, but being dead wherein we were held. It's not talking about the law of Moses. It's talking about the law of death that was also instituted in the law of Moses. If you don't follow it, you die. So it's still only pointing out one area that was against us. You got that? Read.
That we should serve in newness of spirit and not in the oldness of the letter.
And that's why we have to deal with the newness of spirit, not the oldness of the letter, because in the oldness of the letter of Moses' law, if you didn't follow it, came what? Yes, death. But remember, the Sabbath still stands. The Ten Commandments still stand. All the things that are righteous in the law still stands. But the death part is what Christ did away with. That is the law it's speaking of. But the Christians don't want you to believe that. Why? Because they understand the wages of sin is death. If they can get you to break God's law on purpose, that's a one-way ticket to hell. Hold that and get 1 John 2 and 4 and 1 John 5 and 3, right before the book of Revelations.
1 John chapter 2 verse 4.
Read it.
He that saith, I know him, and keepeth not his commandments, is a liar, and the truth is not in him.
That's crystal clear. So you can't say the law is done away with when it tell you right now that if you teach people that the law is done away with, you are a liar. 1 John 5 and 3, read it.
1 John chapter 5 verse 3. For this is the love of the Most High.
This is how you show love to the Most High.
That we keep his commandments.
That's crystal clear. So when you see that word law, before you make a statement about that word law or a conclusion, find out what law Paul is talking about. Because this is clear that the only way we can show our love to the Most High is to what?
That we keep his commandments.
That we keep his commandments.
And his commandments are not grievous.
And his commandments are not grievous. So they'll set up a few prestigious teachers and put a nice suit on them and tell you how the law of Moses was against us. That's a lie. The law of death in the law of Moses was against us. Because that came with the sin of Adam, death. Hope you all can see this. And see, that's what Christ did away with, the sacrificial part, where animals don't die no more for our sins. Okay? Now, let's read the 7th verse to give you more proof on this. Because Paul knew that once he made this statement, you have some Christians out there believing that the law of Moses is done away with. Let's get for sinner's transgression of the law. 1 John, 2, 3 and 4. So they'll know, to the brothers and sisters out there will know what sin is. Read.
1 John chapter 3 verse 4.
Read it.
Whosoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law.
That's what sin is. Read.
For sin is the transgression of the law.
Sin is what?
For sin is the transgression of the law.
For sin is transgression of the law. That's crystal clear. Now let's go to Romans 7 and 7. Because Paul knew that when he made this statement, Christians would start believing that, or might think that you can actually sin on purpose because Moses' law is done away with. He knew that some people might get that idea that may come against these writings. That may one day come across these writings. Read Romans 7 and 7.
Romans chapter 7 verse 7. What shall we say then?
What shall we say then?
Is the law sin?
Now it's talking about the law of Moses. Is the law sin?
God forbid.
God forbid.
Nay, I had not known sin but by the law.
You don't know sin unless you've seen the 10 Commandments. How do you know what sin is without a law? So he considered that, you know what? The law is not done away with. The law is good. What shall we say then? Is the law sin? Is it wrong? The churches would make you believe that the law is sin. That the law of Moses is sin. Now how do we know it's the law of Moses? I'm going to show you how it shifted from the sin of Adam to the sin that was put in the law of Moses, all the way now to speaking about the law of Moses in itself. I'm going to show you how it shifted there. Read.
For I had not known lust, except the law had said, thou shalt not covet.
That's how I know that's the law of Moses, because that's in the Ten Commandments. Now he shifted back to the commandments there. So he said the commandments are good, because I didn't know that I was lusting until I read a scripture that says that lusting is wrong. So how can Christians say the law is done away with when it's that law we measure ourselves from to know if we're going right or wrong? Right? But read.
Verse 8, but sin, taken occasion by the commandment.
Now it's talking about the sin of death that came with Adam. But sin, here's that law again, taken occasion by the commandment, because certain things happen and a new commandment come into your memory. Read.
Wrought in me all manner of concupiscence.
Concupiscence is unlawful, what you would call unlawful sexual activity. All like orgy and all those types of things. When you look at the word concupiscence, it's unlawful physical activity. So he says, a sin taken occasion, so sometimes these thoughts would come to his mind, which wrought all types of manner of concupiscence in him. Read.
For without the law, sin was dead.
He says, without the law, sin was dead. Until I found out the law, I didn't know what sin was. He had no idea what sin was until he learned the law. Read.
Verse 9, for I was alive without the law once.
I was alive without the law once.
But when the commandment came, sin revived and I died.
But when the commandment came, sin revived and I died. When that law of sin came, that means when I didn't have the truth, that thing would come up in me and it would revive and it would kill me over and over again. That's what it's saying. It says, for I was alive without the law once. That's the law of Moses. But when the commandment came, that means that sin, which is in Adam, let me correct this. It says, for I was without the law once. Okay. But when the commandment came, that means when he learned the law, sin revived, which means now he could recognize sin. That's the correction there, excuse me. When sin revived, he could recognize it now. And at one point, when the law was done away with and he didn't think about the law, he didn't know that he was sinning. The example we can give is before you got the truth, and the things we do naturally, which is sin. You didn't know it was wrong, but then you started coming into the truth and reading the commandments, and now sin revived. You can actually see the sin and make a conscious choice to do it or not to do it. These are the struggles that Paul was dealing with here. Read.
Verse 10. And the commandment which was ordained to life.
He says, and the commandment which was ordained to life, which is the Ten Commandments,
I found to be death unto me.
I found to be death unto me. Why? Because all these choices come. Every time a choice comes to follow one of those commandments, he also sees sin telling him not to. There's something else working that came with Adam, which actually diverted Adam's direction into that tree of good and evil. Read.
Verse 10. And the commandment which was ordained to life, I found to be death unto me.
Go ahead.
For sin, taken occasion by the commandment, deceived me, and by it slew me. Wherefore the law is holy.
So he realized that something would revive in him to destroy him, the same thing that worked in Adam. Therefore, when he put all this on the table, when Paul examined the whole matter, he find out that the law is holy. Why did I teach this in the church? The law is holy. Why? Because through it, you can see what sin is. You can actually recognize when something is coming up to take you down or to destroy you. Wherefore the law is holy, read.
And the commandment holy.
And the commandment holy.
And just and good.
So you can't use Paul to say the law is done away with. You must examine the word law and in any place Paul is writing, to know what law he's speaking about. Right? It says, wherefore the law is holy, and the commandment is holy, and just, and good. 13.
Was then that which is good made death unto me?
But was that which is good, is it made death unto me?
God forbid.
No. So he's saying, listen, there's nothing wrong with the law that the Most High gave Moses. The only part of that law was against us, was the death part. Because in the beginning, death was not so. That was the only part of the commandments that was against us. Because if you're dead, is there an opportunity to repent? Is there an opportunity to change? Right? Finish reading.
Verse 13. Was then that which is good made death unto me? God forbid.
God forbid, read.
But sin, that it might appear sin.
But sin, that it might appear sin.
Working death in me by that which is good, that sin by the commandment might be exceeding sinful. For we know that the law is spiritual.
But we know that the law is spiritual.
But I am carnal.
But I am carnal.
Sold under sin.
Sold under sin. So through the law, he was able to recognize the law of righteousness that was given through the commandments, and a law that came through his father Adam. And to understand that all of us, every day, will struggle with those two. That's what it's about. Paul was dealing with those same struggles. Every person that's a child of Adam deals with these struggles. And the same way we're under the law in which a woman is bound by her husband as long as he liveth. It's the same way we're bound by this law as long as we live. As long as we're living, you will have that struggle of the flesh and the spirit. Every person will have the same struggle. No one less or more than another. Right? Read.
Verse 15. For that which I do, I allow not.
He says, because that which I do, I allow not. I'm doing some things that really I don't want to do according to my knowledge of the law. Read.
For what I will do, that do I not.
The things that I want to do, I find myself not doing them. Read.
But what I hate, that I do.
And then I find myself doing some of the things I don't like, even though I want to do the right thing. That's what Paul was dealing with, these same struggles that all of us deal with. Well, and that's a level when you can actually get to the point where you can recognize the battle. So that's where he was examining. He wasn't examining someone else's battle. He was examining his battle and actually bringing forth those struggles and writing it in a letter and sending it to the elders who may also be dealing with these struggles. Okay, that's what the letters were for. Because no matter how high or low you are, or whether you began a long time or just started, we all are under the curse of Adam. And it's through Christ's blood that gives us an opportunity that we can fight this thing and become new before death arrives. And that's the key point. And that's what Paul is bringing. But I use these scriptures as an example to show you Christians have pigeonholed Paul into one demographic without understanding him and its purpose. That's the theologians who've done that. Paul is not against the law because through the law he was able to examine himself. Okay? And now, because so many Christians have used that, you have Jews out there who are unlearned, are believing what the Christians have been teaching about Paul. Right? Let's go to the next verse.
Verse 16.
Go ahead.
Verse 16. If then I do that which I would not, I consent unto the law that is good.
Go ahead.
Verse 17. Now then, it is no more I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me.
Now Paul is recognizing that when he do these things that he don't want to do, it's something else in him that he has to control. It's not him. It was what was given to him by his father Adam. It's his struggle. Right? 18.
Verse 18. For I know that in me, that is, in my flesh, dwelleth no good thing.
Now that was a deep level, because here's a leader of the church. And he's telling the disciples right out. For I know that in me, that's in my flesh, when I operate in my flesh or in the sins of Adam, dwelleth no good thing. Why? Because that thing got to be rooted out. Only Christ can take that carnal sin from us. Right? So that's what it's showing. And even these guys were in the church, was dealing with these struggles. And you see, and that's why so many times people get disappointed when they see something happens that may fall on the carnal side. And I'm talking about in churches or in anything in particular. Because church was set up to make everybody believe that when you're in a certain position, you are flawless. You are sinless. That nothing can touch you. You're just this holy guy who floated out of the clouds. When every man and woman deal with the same struggles. And if they taught that every man and woman deal with these same struggles as Paul, people will be more understanding when things happen, when falls do come. They will be more respected to certain things and more forgiving. If they understood this. Right? Read.
For I know that in me, that is in my flesh.
He says he know that in his flesh
dwelleth no good thing.
Dwelleth no good thing.
For to will is present with me.
Because to do the right thing is present with me.
But how to perform that which is good, I find not.
But I find myself doing the other. That's what Paul was dealing with. Now some people might look at him and say, well, he shouldn't have been doing it. Listen, no. Well, he shouldn't be part of the church. No, yes, he should be. Because his struggle is no different than any other man in this earth. But he's willing to fight through that and continue to do what the Most High set him off to do. And the work itself will allow him to get away from those things that was attending his flesh, that was going against his flesh. Because now he's doing the work of the Most High. He had no time to tend his flesh. And not only that, through these struggles, he got to know himself. So what happens when you get to that point where one is battling or one is beating the other, or the sin of Adam is beating the spirit? You know that, okay, it's time to fight against that spirit. I need to fast. I need to do everything to buffet my flesh so that I'm spiritual enough to overcome that sin that came with Adam. If I feed my flesh and just deal with my flesh all the time, eventually the flesh will win. So I have to purposely buffet or kill my flesh to a certain degree so that I can even imagine fighting this battle. Right? Read.
Verse 20.
Go ahead.
Now if I do that, I would not.
But if I do that, I would not.
It is no more I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me.
He says, now I realize that if I do it, I know that it's sin that's dwelling in me. So if I find myself doing something wrong, now I can recognize, all right, I'm going to have to work on that. Now, the good thing about that is, if the sin is present, you know what to work on. If you're walking through life as if you are this perfect person and that you're not even subject to sin, then you're not working on the things that may drag you into hell. You're not even thinking about it because it's not present. So it's a good thing that Paul was examining this. It's not bad. He was examining it so that once he pointed out, he said, I know that's a weakness of mine, but I can see it now. Sin have revived. I know the law, sin have revived, and I can see it. I know what my battle is. I may struggle with it, I may fight it, but eventually I'm going to take it down, and then if another rears its head, I'll know that's my battle too. And then after you take all these spirits down, you're becoming cleaner, and you're becoming more whole, and as we come closer to Christ, we're starting to behold Christ in the mirror. That means that the old man is being tore off of us until we are looking Christ in the mirror. We're seeing Christ instead of our wretched, sinful selves. And see, and that's a life struggle. That's a struggle. That's something that people go through in time. And eventually they get to the point in which they've overcome their demons. But suppose everything Paul was dealing with, that he was told that he couldn't do these things because he was dealing with these struggles. Struggles that everyone deals with every day. He took up his cross and carried it. And still was able to battle these spirits. So what can you say about Paul? He can tell you from the beginning, listen, there's nothing good in me. So you can say what you want to say about me. Because in any of us, there's no good thing. In any of us. But at least Paul was man enough to look at his demons and say, you know what? I know these are in me. So if I got the knowledge that they're there, Christ gave us the knowledge on how to deal with these things, to buffet them, because you're not going to get them out of your life altogether. They're going to struggle within your member until we're changed, until death is actually done away and Christ receives the victory over this and we are changed back to what Adam was before he ate of the tree of good and evil. Now there's a few more verses I would like to read. Go ahead.
Verse 21.
Go ahead.
I find then a law.
Paul says, I find then a law.
That when I would do good, evil is present with me.
So he found out that the same time that he do good, evil is always there. Even when you're doing good, you know evil is there. How do you know? You had to make a choice to do the good. You had a choice. The choice was not to do it. So even when you do the right thing, evil is present. Right? Read the 22nd verse.
For I delight in the law of the Most High after the inward man.
He says, so I delight in the law of the Most High after the inward man. So he delight in the law of the Most High that was brought through Christ. The inward man. Through Christ's blood, he gives us the spirit to fight against the sin of Adam. Read.
Verse 23. But I see another law in my members, warring against the law of my mind.
But I see another law in my members, warring against the law of my mind.
And bringing me into captivity.
And bringing me into captivity.
To the law of sin, which is in my members.
To the law of sins, which is in my extremities, my members. So he's recognizing that something is fighting with him all the time to bring him back to the guy he was. And that's a struggle that every person who's born in the earth have. Read.
Verse 24. O wretched man that I am.
He says, O wretched man that I am.
Who shall deliver me from the body of this death?
Who shall deliver me from this death?
Verse 25. I thank the Most High through Yeshua Christ our Lord. So then with the mind I myself serve the law of the Most High.
With my mind I serve the law of the Most High.
But with the flesh, the law of sin.
But there's going to always be in my flesh this law of sin. Now I must overcome this by buffeting it, understanding it, and making sure I keep this at bay. It's non-stop. It's always there. And someone tell me that Paul wasn't a deep brother. And it makes me sick when I hear about all the evil that is spoken against Paul. But let me tell you, it's no different than what happened with Christ. If you hear some of the rumors and things they said about Christ, you would think that he was the son of Beelzebub. They was calling him that. They was calling him all types of things. Accusers of the brethren. This guy came doing miracles, healing people, raising people from the dead. And instead of saying, you know what, that's something good there, he's still going to have one of our people going to look at him and say, well, yeah, he's doing it. He's using devils. He's using Beelzebub to do it. And I just wanted to give you some examples not to get tripped up in questioning Paul. It's not that Paul writings are not on the level. Those that oppose Paul are not on the level and not patient enough to go to the Most High and get understanding, and never was put in a position of great work as Paul. So it's easy to sit on the sideline and think you got a doctrine that can verify what's right or wrong within the Bible, when yet you've never walked in none of the patriarchs or none of the disciples' shoes. You never set up anything. You never tried to do anything. And guess what? I see here, and I'm looking at here, and I'm looking at Paul. Man, there was nobody harder on Paul than himself. And this is what kept him humble and kept him in the spirit of Christ, understanding that regardless of the knowledge you might have, you still got your own struggles. Okay? None of us can escape the sins of Adam. Right? I'll probably continue this. I want to go further into this, so I'm going to take the second part of this, going into Galatians, into the law and how the Christians use Galatians to their own error. I'm going to do that in the Advanced Academy next week, okay? And then we're going to take it from, we're going into the lessons of the fruits of the spirits and the things that I've mentioned earlier in the Advanced Academy. I mean, in the Advanced Academy. And let me tell you, the Advanced Academy is free, all right? But it's for those who are with the church and those who went through the prior academies and actually want to continue. So they're not paying for that, for those who want to know. All right? So, let's see. Okay, I will open this up for questions for about 5 minutes on the lesson or whatever the case is, and then after that, when it's pertaining to the lesson, and I'm going to say this, all praises to Ahaya Bahashim Yeshaya, and I would like to say that I'm glad I did put this, the one I did earlier, once and for all. Therefore, I don't have to address that madness anymore. You understand? For those that want to be a part of the madness, that's where they'll be. I mean, there's only a handful of those guys. And one thing is, when someone brought it to my attention, because I don't really spend my time on it, I looked at some of the views on those videos, man, and ain't nobody looking at that mess anyway. They look like a bunch of little disgruntled, I don't know what. So, I don't even know these people. So, and it's good that I'm talking to people. How many people we have in here today? Let's see here. Let's see. What's the count here? Oh, okay. We got a little bit over 200, probably near 300 today. But a lot of people are here may run into some of that stuff, and it's good to y'all hear it firsthand. And so that y'all don't get caught up into that mess. These people, what can you say? They don't have the time for nothing else. They're lonely. And it's okay to be lonely. Just you can reach out and say shalom, and we'll embrace you anyway. There's no love lost. And I'm gonna tell you this: the same people though that's doing that, if they stop doing it and say, I apologize or whatever, to me it'd be like they never did it before. So. Let's see. Someone say, how is the poor to leave Babylon? I would say, Amy, it'd be good for you to focus on yourself, okay? Because I know a lot of poor who have left Babylon. Okay, and another thing is, you may run into a lot of poor and prophesy to a lot of poor who don't want to leave Babylon. So why waste your time on something that you can't control? Why look into and ask questions on something that you can't control? If you poor and want to leave Babylon, that's where your focus should be. All right. Let's see what the next. All right. Someone say, do Jewish people today apply judgment of the law of Moses? As the guest on GOC Radio Wednesday said. It's all about Christ. There's no set of rules. There's no set of rules for Jewish people and any other people. They have to renounce their pagan deities, their pagan gods, and come to Christ. The majority of the Jewish population that went over there from Europe, a lot of them people are not even Jewish. A lot of them are just converts. A lot of them are not. Some of them are not even Khazars. So I can't. The only thing I can say is they need to come to Christ and renounce their worships. The worships over there are satanic and pagan. So the same thing applied to all of us applied to those who are Jewish. They need to just renounce that and come to the truth of Christ. It's not about keeping Torah, because they're not keeping, those Jewish people are not keeping Torah. They're following the Torah according to the Babylonian customs, even the holy days. So they're not keeping Torah. All right? Okay, Gedayawan, what about the people in the Middle East? Can we still pray over the halal food since this is all we have? Yes, Gedayawan, that is a perfect example of eating the food for conscience sake. As long as it's lawful, you pray over it in the name of Ahaya and eat it, because the majority of the supermarkets we go to, we don't know whether or not what gods they are praying over before they kill those animals and put them in your supermarkets. So you can't be over righteous to the point of starvation unless you plan on becoming vegan. All right? Someone says they are practicing military here big time in Los Angeles. Okay, you probably need to send me something on that so that we can probably go through that. All right. Someone says, my question is that when in the wilderness we will be under the rod again. The last time you said we will be doing sacrifices again. Is this correct? And why would we revert back to the law of sacrifice? Well, we will be under the rod again, and part of the rod is sacrifice. All right? Animals, the Bible tells you that we will have cattle and all that therein. So we're not going to be just killing animals just to kill animals to eat. Don't you know what a sacrifice is? A sacrifice is the killing of animals. So we'll actually do it. The Bible tells you, get Zechariah 2 and 9. Read it.
Zechariah chapter 2 verse...
Go to the part where it says, and cattle therein.
Verse 5. For I, saith the Lord, will be unto her a wall, verse 4. And said unto them, Run speak to this young man, saying, Jerusalem shall be inhabited as towns without walls.
Jerusalem shall be inhabited as towns without walls. Go ahead.
For the multitude of men and cattle therein.
For the multitude of men and cattle therein. Go ahead.
Verse 5.
So we're going to have a multitude of men and cattle. So the cattle is going to be for a purpose. We're not just going to eat the cattle. You understand? There's going to be a prayers that we must do over this sacrifice for nourishment. Okay? That's sacrifice. All right? Let's see here. Let's go to Jeremiah 33 and 11.
Jeremiah chapter 33, verse 11. The voice of joy and the voice of gladness.
The voice of joy and the voice of gladness.
The voice of the bridegroom and the voice of the bride. The voice of them that shall say, Praise the Lord of hosts, for the Lord is good, for his mercy endureth forever, ever. And of them that shall bring the sacrifice of praise into the house of the Lord.
And for them that shall bring the sacrifice of praise into the house of the Lord. Read.
For I will cause to return the captivity of the land.
I will cause to return the captivity of the land.
As at the first, saith the Lord.
As at the first, saith the Lord. So you have to realize we'll be going through a 7-year period of takedown throughout all the nations. During this time, we will have the 7 years. It's going to be death, takedown, and all of that during that first 7 years. And the burial of the dead. During that time, it's sacrifice. All right? After that, the kingdom will begin for the millennium, and there will be no more death. Christ is going to bind Satan. There will be no more death. Therefore, the curse that resulted in sacrifice will be done away with altogether. There will be nothing dying in the kingdom once the 1,000 years is established. That's in the commandment where it says the gazelle will lay down with the lion. They'll be next to each other. The roe will lay down with the lion. That means you'll have deer playing with lion, but no more carnivores. Okay, so that all came with the sin of Adam. Okay, what is the next one here? Someone says, please read John, 2 John 2 and 6. Read that. Well, I'm about to pray out so that Elder Gabar can come in. You know what I mean? Hopefully he's all right. I know that he felt a certain type of way about the guy he helped, that Italian guy. Those 2 Italian brothers who's coming against brothers now, and we don't even know these guys. Well, I don't know him. But, you know, I'll pray for him. But I know Gabar feeling a certain type of way about that right now. All right, what's the next one there? Read that.
2 John verse 6. And this is love.
2 John 2 and 6, read.
Verse 6. And this is love, that we walk after his commandments. This is the commandment, that as you have heard from the beginning, you should walk in it.
That's crystal clear. That's a good precept that talks about the commandments again. So how can Christians just overread that and deal with the misunderstanding of Paul's writings? Let's see here. All right. Oh no, Lex. No, you're fine. It's fine with what we discussed. You don't have to worry about that. We're good. You're a good guy, man. You know. Let me tell you. We all see through a glass dimly. And when Christ has come, he's going to actually allow all of us to see the things that we don't see clearly. One thing about us is that we never teach something we don't know. If we don't know, we'll wait until the revelation and wait till we study up on it enough until the Most High send information to teach it. But what we do know have been well studied. Just because we all don't understand the same thing doesn't make us enemies. And I'm going to say that. That doesn't make us enemies. And it is as long as we can operate from that vantage point, Israel will begin to operate or think differently towards each other. All right? But one thing that I will not compromise in my being is the name of the Most High, because I know what they did with the Tetragrammaton, and also during the advanced lessons. As a matter of fact, we're going to it tomorrow through the academy. I'm going to show you proof how they actually injected ruddy, the Masoretes, so that they can make people believe that Esau was Jacob and put off the red stigma. So I'm going to go into that tomorrow. All right, so, but again, we don't all have to agree on everything, brothers and sisters. That's just not the way of the world. But we don't have to, but again, on the points we disagree, we shouldn't become enemies. I know people are upset with us because we said straight off that the name that the Jewish people have been promoting and hiding for ages is actually Satan. We found that out. That's research. And that the Most High's name is Ahia, and that will not be negotiated, because he said when Moses asked him his name, Ahia, Ashar, Ahia. So that cannot be disputed, even for those who want to jump to verses under that. You can't dispute the answer the Most High gave Moses when he asked the Most High his name. You can jump around it and try to get around it, but you can't. It's right there. So I'm not going, and some people say, well, why is it only in that one place? Why? Because there's only one way to translate I am that I am. If they would have put the Tetragrammaton there, you could have easily seen the deception, because it doesn't mean I am that I am. The Tetragrammaton don't. But they was able to change everything else, and they did this in the 9th century under the Masoretes. If you don't believe me, do the research on Masoretic text. Okay? Do the research yourself. Okay, if you're in Toronto, we got someone in Toronto that can help you. We have someone in Canada who can help you. So send an email with a phone number, and a brother close to you will get with you. All right? Okay? Okay, I'm going to pass this over to Elder Gabar. I don't know whether or not someone says, normally I wouldn't mention such foolish things, but a guy on YouTube uploaded a video last night with Elder Gabar from a phone conversation. Just wanted to give you heads up. Yeah, we spoke of that earlier. Gabar knew about this. This guy, he just want to be seen. If you look at his face, he just want to be seen. I mean, it's total madness. And the only point about it is, I felt that Gabar shouldn't have really gave him any. I wouldn't even fed into anything this guy said. How can you speak about tithes and you're not paying tithes, and you never paid tithes to the church? Only been to his building in New York twice. Gave $5, and then it was offered for this brother to, listen, we'll give you $25 for the $5 that you gave us. How can he speak about an academy that he never been in? So he's just a guy that's looking to use our church as a platform for attention. And he's the Italian guy. Him and his brother, both Italians, that's coming up against the church. So just do me a favor, brothers and sisters. Just ignore them and block them. Ignore them and block them, okay? Let's see here. Okay, what's next? I'm going to answer 2 more questions, and I'll wish you Godspeed, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Someone asks, is the King James Bible translated after the scrolls have been tampered with? You have to realize the King James translation came in the 1600s, 1611. The Masoretes started scribing their gods into some of our scrolls in the 9th century. You're talking about somewhat, about a half a century before the King James translation. All right? So, I don't really say tampered with, because if you understand Hebrew, you can easily switch a few names. I'm not going to throw out the Bible and its content and all the spiritual revelation that come with it, because these Jewish guys wanted to give all of our gods credit to their tetragrammaton Baal. Okay? Let's see here. Let's see here. So, with that, I wish I could answer more questions. I said 2 more because I can go all day, but really I can't. I want to say thank you all, and it's good to see the many that are actually learning and coming to the fullness of this. And I want to say a special shout out to the brothers who are in the UK, in the United Kingdom, who are doing well, like Brother Uriel and Brother Rockline, and I want to exhort those brothers that are still in the faith doing it hard, Josh and Brother Asher and all the brothers and the sisters who are backing them up. I want to say the water, and you have your reward, brothers and sisters. You're doing it well, you're persevering. And the brothers who left out, the brothers who are over in the Middle East, and shalom to you all. And you are persevering. Of course, as you can see, the blessings the Most High is bestowing on a lot of you brothers and sisters. And I would like to say a special hearty thank you to Brother Gabar and Brother Gabar Karab and all the crew over there. And I would like to say a special thank you to Brother Yawasap. He come through. He's going to help us with a lot of what we need to do. And I would like to. There's so many people we can't thank. The brothers and the sisters who have continued to support and help the work and appreciate what has been done so far. The Most High see your labor and your sacrifice. And we would like to say a special thank you. And Kwam Yasha Allah, rise Israel. And every time I see these numbers coming and people coming to the truth and standing for something, it lets us know that our work out on those streets, in the cold, battling, getting on planes, going all over the world, it lets us know that this wasn't in vain. And I know for sure, before this is over, brothers and sisters, we will all be in that, a lot of us will be in that wilderness together. We will have each other's back. Okay? So with that, I'm going to say shalom, and you stay strong and support Elder Gabar and his lesson. I hopefully he come up next, and please, Gabar, don't focus on that guy. I mean, if we ignore him, he'll probably because he put GOCC in it, it'll probably get about 1,000 views. But besides that, anything else he put up in there, it'll probably get about 50 hits. So don't even worry about it. He'll go away. Just let him be. Let the two Italians. With that, I'm going to say shalom.
Shalom.
Let's see here.